Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us today. On behalf of TAIF, I'm delighted to welcome our global audience to today's session. At TAIF, our goal is to build professional capacity, foster deep learning, and enhance awareness around Islamic finance and Sharia-compliant financial solutions worldwide. So today's webinar is titled Islamic Capital Markets and Sharia Screening, Principles, Methodologies, and Industry Applications. As interest in ethical and sustainable investments continues to grow globally, understanding how capital markets align with Sharia framework today's standards is more critical than ever. So today we will explore two core principles governing Islamic capital markets, the quantitative and qualitative screening methodologies used for equities and their practical applications across the financial industry. To guide us through this important topic, we are deeply honored to be joined by a distinguished global authority and pioneer in ethical investments, Dr. Shariq Nisar. So Dr. Shariq Nisar holds a doctorate in economics from Aligarh Muslim University and brings over 2 decades of experience bridging top-tier academia and financial markets. He has served as a senior visiting fellow at Harvard Law School and is currently an adjunct lecturer at the University of Luxembourg, as well as professor and principal at one of India's top premier management institutes. Over his career, Dr. Nisar has played a pivotal role in shaping India's ethical financial ecosystem, pioneering the country's first Sharia index, founding the Center for Alternative Finance at ITM Business School, and advising landmark organizations such as Bombay Stock Exchange, the National Stock Exchange, Tata Asset Management, and Government of Kerala. So before we begin, a brief note on the format of our 1 hour session. Dr. Nisar will present for approximately 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box at any point during the presentation, and we will try to address as many as possible. Without further delay, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Shariq Nisar. So Dr. Nisar, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Musraf. And thank you, TAIF team, for inviting me for this session, which is very close to my heart, and whatever practice in Islamic finance field in India we are able to do. This is one area which is very much in practice. So I'm grateful to TAIF team for inviting me for this session, and I hope that all the participants are benefited from this session. And with this brief prologue, I would like to start. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidni ilma. In today's talk, we will try to cover, other than introduction, logic and importance of Sharia screening, and then we will quickly run through the various Sharia screening methodologies across the globe almost, starting with the western part to all the way to Southeast Asia. We will have some time for quick appraisal of Sharia screening rules. Right. And then we will also discuss some real life issues and challenges. And other than this, if your interest goes deeper, I will be very happy to showcase the actual working of Sharia screening. How do we collect data? How do we sift data? How do we order it? And then all the way through to final list of Sharia compliant stocks. So those folders are already open in my computer. And in case you show interest, then I'll be very happy to have a real life case study as well. So that's my plan for today. We will quickly run through the entire presentation, maybe in about 30, 35, 40 minutes time, not more than that. And then 20, 25 minutes of time we will try to keep for your question and answer. So here we go. This is just a glimpse of what is the state of Islamic capital market in the Arab in OIC country. So there's a OIC Exchange Forum. We all know that there are 57 countries member of Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And out of those, the latest available data is about 29-30 countries having a stock indices, exchanges. And the total number of listed companies are less than 6,000 in all these countries. Uh, and many other countries whose data we could not collect, but it is possible that they might be having some stock exchange functioning to some extent, maybe some companies listed. But by and large, 29 OIC country of the 57 have working stock exchanges, and the total number of listed companies in these 29 countries is 5,870. And this turns out to be a market cap of roughly about 6 trillion USD. In the graph here, you will see that top 10 market cap of Islamic countries. Saudi Arabia is almost 1/3 or maybe more than 1/3 of the total Islamic market cap of the world, followed by UAE, Indonesia, and Malaysia, Turkey, UAE. UAE has got 2, DFM and ADX, and then Qatar, Kuwait, Morocco, and Pakistan. So this is the situation of Islamic capital market country. Keep this background in mind while we are going through all these discussions henceforth. So I'll start with okay. So as the primary role of entire financial system is to take money from where it is to where it is needed, and this role is performed by 3 types of financial institutions in any country if you look at. So the entire role is take money wherever it is idle, pass it on to those who are willing to use, who are capable of using it, so that more wealth is generated, more employment is generated, more goods and services are produced. To perform all these functions, in all these countries, if you look at financial structure, there are 3 types of institutions. One, that lending and borrowing institutions, they primarily borrow from savers and they lend it to users. And those institutions are known as banking and non-banking companies. In every country, you'll find this structure, and this is the primary structure of any financial system. Other than this, when the company goes little advanced, then the capital market also gets developed. And here it is directly connecting. Capital market is basically a platform which directly connects those who have surplus fund and those who need surplus funds. So this is a mechanism where people get connected to each other with their resources, and then they benefit from the utilization of financial resources. And then finally, there is another structure, financial market structure, which is known as financial risk management. And this is actually insurance sector, which includes pension, life insurance, general insurance, and all kinds of financial risk management. So in every country, these are 3 kinds of major financial institution structure, which is involved in taking money from where it is, from the surplus unit, and passing it on to those who need it. This is general structure. Now we all know about Sharia requirement also. So the first one is having largest issues as it deals directly with riba. And the third one also is having a major Sharia issue of gharar, where the risk is being traded. From Sharia point of view also, the capital market is not fully compliant with Sharia, but it is the nearest to Islamic ethos of taking reward based on the return generated from the real economic activity. So that is why the talk today that we are going to have assumes another significance, because this is one area where Islamic contracts of muzaraba, musharaka, etc. are feasible, and not in the other 2 structural arrangements that we see across the globe. Now, as I said that it is nearest to Islamic, and how it is nearest, because muzaraba and musharaka is possible. When people invest money in companies, when people invest money with entrepreneurs, they take reward and they take risk. So that is in the spirit closest to Islamic norm. Why do we need Sharia screening? What is Sharia screening, etc. is in today's financial system, getting 100% Sharia compliant stocks is very, very rare. There will be violation, there will be compromises based on different economic scenario, based on different financial contracts, and based on the regulatory environment in which the company is operating or stock exchange is operating. So because of this, there are two challenges. One is that this is the preferred Islamic investment, and therefore people want to get involved into. And the challenge is getting 100% Sharia compliant option is almost nil, as we have seen in the context of OIC country, that out of 56, 30 have Sharia, 30 have stock exchanges or secondary market or companies listed. Other 50% of the OIC country, almost, they have non-existent capital market. So these are challenges where whether it is Islamic funds, whether it is Islamic bank, or whether it is surplus funds of individuals, they are looking for Sharia compliant opportunities, but that is hardly available in its 100% pure sense. And therefore, since it is hardly available 100% pure sense, then there are Sharia scholars have agreed that if 100% is not possible, let us not leave it completely and try to see that minimum Sharia compliance is adhered to, so that there is some sort of standardization across the globe as far as investments according to Sharia and capital market is concerned. So to 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 fulfill this desire, Sharia screening is involved. We try to find out which are the companies out of the total listed pass minimum Sharia requirement to be able to make the individual investor, retail investor, fund managers, banks, insurance companies, etc., which are working on Islamic principle, to be able to invest in those stocks, those companies, those entrepreneurs. So that is the background in which we are going to discuss about Sharia screening. So as I said, that 100% stocks are not fully Sharia compliant available, and therefore we need compromises. And because it is extremely important for every fund manager, every individual investor, and financial institutions working on Islamic basis to be able to have some kind of Sharia. Now, when we want to invest, there are two levels of processes involved. And based on your interest, I can go deeper into that. But at the moment, I will just try to cover what is the basic across the globe, so that we all have an idea about why it is practiced, how it is practiced, and what are differences and similarities across the globe. And then we will go deeper into, depending upon your interest in the subject. So as of now, we only want to start with that. When you are looking to invest in capital market and when you are concerned about Sharia compliance, the primary responsibility of the investor is to look at the business of the company. What is the product that company is involved into? What is the business model of that company? What kind of revenue the company is generating from? And these are very important. All these kind of things are known as business screening. We want to first know that who we are getting partnership into. And once we are satisfied that the partner is into halal businesses or the partner is not into any kind of haram businesses, then only we want to proceed further to check at other compliances. So the first part of that screening is known as business screening. And once the company has passed this business screening criteria and we have come to assurance that the company is not into any kind of activities that is haram, and therefore a Sharia compliant investor can become partner in that, can park his money or her money with that company, then we need to look at further compliances that is known as financial screening. And in this financial screening process, we want to know that the company in which we are seeking to make investment is halal from business point of view. But how its financials are structured, what capital of the company's business is into, is coming from non-compliant commitment, non-compliant sources, what sources of its company's revenue are going to be paid, pay interest or going to earn interest, etc. And these are three criteria basically. So what we want to know in the financial screening part is, what is the level of Sharia repugnant debt, what is the level of Sharia repugnant income, and what is the level of cash and receivables in the company. And all three components are collectively known as financial screening. And we want to know all of these information to be able to ascertain whether a company is going to be compliant for Sharia compliant investor or not. And here are some examples. For example, when we are doing business screening, what are we looking at? we are looking at all kinds of non-permissible businesses. We make a list of businesses that is haram for a Sharia compliant investor, Sharia conscious investor. So all those haram activities are actually listed, and we call it negative list. So we have a list of 23 activities. Some are given in this example in the right side bottom box, where like conventional financial institutions, alcohol, swine, tobacco, gambling, vulgar entertainments, etc., etc. So there is a list of almost, when we do real screening, there is a list of 23 activities that we want to know in those companies which we are seeking to do research on Sharia screening, and we want to remove such companies from the list of potential investment. So this business screening is one, and then financial screening, we want to know what is the level of non-compliant debt. For example, company is into, let us say, uh, motor vehicle, but the company has borrowed on interest to conduct its business, and company is obligated to pay interest on that. Now, if you are partner, then obviously your company, which is where you are partner, is paying interest, and you shall also be accountable to. And therefore, there has to be some restriction on this criteria. So Sharia repugnant debt, income, and all extent of cash and receivable. Any company that passes these two filters, business screening and financial screening, is identified as Sharia compliant, although it should be called technically as Sharia tolerant because acceptable, but the market prefers to use the word Sharia compliant. This is how the whole process works. Now I'll quickly move on to the actual practice, and we will quickly run through the entire global practice, and then we will have a collective assessment, and then we will finally go to individual cases if need be. So Dow Jones, why Dow Jones first? This is the oldest Sharia screening provider in the world. And wherever the information was possible, I have also given the period when this actually started. So you can see when Dow Jones started actually, and it was, sorry, just, yes. I was just trying to move this. So Dow Jones is the oldest one, oldest stock exchange service provider in Islamic finance field, and it started in 1999. It was actually launched on February 9. And the company looks at the revenue portion of the company under consideration, and based on revenue allocation, if the revenue is coming from non-compliant activities, the company is removed from the potential, and they have also mentioned the examples like conventional finance, weapons, entertainments, etc., etc. That is the exact wording of the Dow Jones Stock Exchange when it was launched. And other than this, then financial screening criteria is their total borrowing should be less than 33% of trailing 24-month average market capitalization, and non-compliant business income should be less than 5% of the total revenue. So this is Dow Jones criteria, and this is how they screen. Now, if you're working for Dow Jones, or if you're working on Dow Jones principles, then this is the criteria you should be applying to find a company whether it is Sharia compliant or not. Moving quickly to others. Now, we all know that Dow Jones is taken over by S&P Global, and the S&P Global itself has a separate Sharia index and Sharia screening norms, and this was launched in 2007. Here you see that business screening criteria is like this. Company's annual audited report is screened, and activities screened out are alcohol, tobacco, pork, financial services, advertising and media, gold, and adult entertainments, etc., etc. So this is how they do. You will also notice some differences here and there in wordings. And if you look at the financial screening criteria, total debt they prefer to be less than 33% of average market value of 36 months. And non-compliant business income is less than 5% of the total revenue. So I think this one, the bottom one you find is common with Dow Jones, but total debt criteria, you see some differences in S&P and Dow Jones. Moving further, you look at FTSE, and here In business screening criteria, you find that all conventional finance activities, alcohol, pork, non-halal food, uh, whether it is production, packaging, or processing, or anything which is haram, including casino, gambling, pornography, tobacco, weapons, etc., is removed. And once a company has passed this criteria, then further screening is applied. And total debt in this case of FTSE should be less than 33.33% of total asset. And then cash plus interest bearing securities should be less than 33.33% of total asset. And then you have two more criteria, accounts receivable and non-compliant income. I'm in the interest of time, I'm not going to read everyone, all these, otherwise it will consume time. So wherever I find some kind of differences, that I will highlight for your attention. And otherwise, I will allow TAIF team to share this presentation with participants if they have interest in that. So what is the difference between what we are seeing now and before the two? The major difference we are seeing is the denominator. In earlier case, it was market capitalization, either 24-month average or 36-month average. And here we see total asset as the denominator of total debt and cash plus interest bearing securities, etc. So this is FTSE. This was launched in 1999. Then Morgan Stanley Capital Index. And here we see activities which are removed on the basis of business screening are alcohol, adult entertainment, cinema, conventional financial services, defense, weapons, gambling, casino, hotel, etc., etc., etc. You will keep noticing defense also as common factor to be excluded from the Sharia list. When it comes to financial screening, here you see both the denominators are applied. So debt should be less than 33% or 33.33% of total asset, or less than 30% of month-end market capitalization. And then we have cash plus interest bearing securities criteria. We also have accounts receivable and cash receivable criteria. So now here we see a mix up of both, either total asset or market capitalization. And earlier we have seen either this or that. Here we are seeing both. And we are also noticing slight difference in the numerator, which is 33% or 30%. And in case of accounts receivable, it is 33.33% or 49%. Moving further, we go to Borsa Istanbul. Now we are moving into Muslim or OIC member countries jurisdictions. And here you see a lot of things are written. Unfortunately, I could not curtail it down, although because there was, it is from many pages of writing that I had to cull it and present it here in one screen. So business screening, they say that the main contract must not contain an article stating that the company will engage in transactions with interest and that goods or services that are legally considered haram, such as alcohol, swine, gambling, will be produced or traded. So they are very specific about mentioning haram and activities from Sharia point of view. That is what how they try to get a company's business screening done. Other than this, we notice that financial screening, they have it should not interest bearing loans should not exceed 33% or the larger of the asset or market value, and interest bearing deposit should also not exceed 33% of the larger of the company's total asset, and objectionable income, which is the impure income, should not exceed 5% of the total income. Now these are financial screening criteria. What is interesting in this case is look at the last three paragraph, and this is one criteria where interest is counted adjusting to the inflation, and this is one criteria. I'm not at the moment going into critical review part of it, but I'm just trying to highlight that Borsa Istanbul is one where inflation is also taken into consideration while doing Sharia screening. And the last paragraph is that. And they also have mentioned when a company is going to be excluded if the company has violated those norms. So from Borsa Istanbul, we quickly move to GCC countries, starting with Saudi Arabia. We have seen that the entire OIC countries, 1/3 of the market share is from Saudi Arabia only, and the largest number of stocks listed there as well. So Saudi Tadawul is in the business screening. You notice they just mentioned that companies' main business activities must be Sharia compliant, but we need to see that main business activity, right? So there could be ancillary business activities or business income, but then what they look at is the main business activity. And this is true also in the sense because if a company's main business activity is non-Sharia compliant, then according to Saudi constitution, the company will not be registered at all. So by default, every company will pass at least on the business screening criteria. What is important as far as second criteria and financial screening criteria is concerned? Here, the non-compliant debt they have mentioned must not exceed 1/3 of the total asset value or market value of the company for the last 12 months, right? This is the condition. Allow me to move my cursor a little bit to be able to see what I'm missing. Oh, it's not working. I wanted to move. Okay. And the non-Sharia investment, you see another word, it should not exceed 33% of total asset value or market value of the company for the last 12 months. And the non-Sharia total revenue, it also should not be more than 5% of the total revenue. So the last value we see that it is across, now we have seen common, right from Dow Jones to S&P to MSCI for FTSE and Saudi, that non-compliant revenue should not be more than 5%. That means compliant revenue should be at least 95%. This is Saudi, and we will quickly move on to cover other countries, and then we will come to common understanding and discussion. We go to Qatar, and here Qatar Al Rayyan Islamic Index. And how do they conduct business screening? Here it is. So based on the activities, following businesses are excluded. They exclude businesses like alcohol, tobacco, pork-related products, conventional financial services, weapons, gambling, musics, hotels, etc., and adult entertainment. That is one part. And the second part, which is financial screening, is their total borrowing should be less than 1/3 of the total asset, and cash plus interest-bearing securities should also be less than 1/3 of the total asset, and accounts receivable and cash, both taken together, should again be less than 1/3 of the total asset. So this is the criteria for Qatar. And then we move on to DFM. From Dubai, I have taken only one. ADSM I have left because I wanted to cover some other countries as well. So DFM is more popular, by the way. And the earliest one to have a Sharia screening norms prepared by Darul Sharia. So in this case, you see that interest-based lending and borrowing, conventional financing, conventional investments, conventional insurance, default transactions in gold, silver, currencies, trading in pork or its byproducts, or trade in all kinds of liquors, alcohols, narcotics, non-medical for medical purposes, etc., is all removed for a company to be considered for Sharia screening at the next level. And then once the company has passed this criteria, then we move on to financial screening criteria. And here they take the average interest-bearing lending. So if the company has lent, it should be less than 30%. If the company has borrowed, it should be less than 30% of the total asset. But here, the interesting part is looking at impure income. If the company has interest in impure income, it should be less than 10% of the total income. So this is one where we have gone from 5% threshold in other cases to 10% threshold in this particular case. So this is about DFM, Dubai Financial Market. And moving further, this is Bahrain because AUFI Sharia norms are compulsory for Bahrain-based financial institution. That is number one. And number two, AUFI, we all know that it is a body, not for profit body, created for creating accounting and Sharia standards for Islamic financial institutions across the globe. Its Sharia standards, its accounting standards are mandated in many countries, And many other countries where it is not mandated, they still try to follow the guidelines provided by the AUFI standards. Right. So here, if we look at AUFI Sharia standard, this is 21 standard. Business screening, AUFI says that investments is permitted if the objective for which the company was established are Sharia lawful. That is number one. If you move on to financial screening criteria, there they mention that fundamental rule is prohibition of acquiring and trading in shares of corporation, undertaking transactions of other prohibited things, or even when their primary activity is lawful. So they are mentioning about the principle stand that any non-compliant means are also fundamentally prohibited, and then they agree to exceptions, and those exceptions are mentioned below. That if the memorandum of association does not mention that one of its objectives is Sharia repugnant, number one. Number two, if total borrowings and debt does not exceed over 30% of market capitalization. Number three, if the total amount of interest taking deposit should not exceed 30% of its market capitalization. And number four, if the total income generated from prohibited component does not exceed 5% of the total income of the company. So these are, so fundamentally they mention about business screening that it should not be violative of Sharia, number one. Number two, they say that in principle, any company violating even the process should be wrong, but then they have agreed to exemptions, and those exemptions are borrowing cannot be more than 30% of market cap, investment, non-compliant investment cannot be more than 30%, and total non-compliant income should not be more than 5% of the total income. This is AUFI, and Bahrain is also covered. So we have covered Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Bahrain. Now we move on to now subcontinent, starting with Pakistan. And there are other countries you might notice that I have not covered, Oman, etc. But by and large, Dow Jones screening criteria or S&P criteria is used in most of these markets. So that is the reason I have not gone into each and every one. Wherever I could find information about and some differences, those things have been mentioned. So here we look at Pakistan Stock Exchange, and in the business screening criteria, they mention that the company's core business must be halal, number one, and in line with dictates of Sharia. And therefore, they mention that the conventional banking, insurance, alcoholic drinks, tobacco, pork, arms manufacturing, pornography, or related activities are not permissible. So companies involved into these things will not be selected for Sharia compliant investment activity. And then moving further, they have criteria of, here you notice the difference, 37% borrowing criteria. So earlier it was actually 40, but now it is 37%. So the company's total interest bearing debt should not be more than 37% of the total asset of the company. That is the most leveraged criteria that we have seen so far. And I think that will be most leverage even if we go further from here. For non-compliant investment, they have criteria of not more than 33% of total asset. Non-compliant income should be less than 5%. That means at least 95% income should be pure from Sharia point of view. This is common across the globe, we have seen. This is common except for DFM where it is 10%. And then they have two additional criteria, which is illiquid asset, at least 25% of the total asset criteria. And then net liquid asset should be less than the total market cap. This is the two additional criteria they have created, and the last two criteria is basically keeping in view the rule of riba. So this is about Pakistan. I quickly move on to India, and here we have business screening, and this is I must disclose that this is the screening that I am personally part of. Our team is Sharia Cap is part of this team. We have designed the Sharia screening criteria for Bombay Stock Exchange, and we continue to monitor it, and we continue to be associated with this. So with this disclaimer, what we do here is we screen companies involved into business activities like alcohol, gambling, tobacco, vulgar entertainment, because we believe that entertainment per se is not non-compliant. animation content provider, exhibition of films, media broadcasting, media content production, whole list of, as I said, that 23 activities are there, which we apply negative list, and any company involved into those businesses, primarily those businesses, will be ousted from the potential Sharia list. And then we have financial screening criteria where borrowings should be less than 25% of the total asset of the company, no market cap, and no other average criteria. And interest income should be less than 3%. So minimum non-compliant income should be 97%. Then only company will pass as far as Bombay Stock Exchange of India is concerned. We move on to NSE, which is India's another major stock exchange. But since India is already covered, I will not spend much time, except that here you will notice the interest income criteria at NSE is 2.5% as against 3% of BSE. So in this case, that means minimum 97.5% income has to be pure. Then only a company will pass Sharia screening criteria test at NSE. And then here we see one additional criteria that company must have at least 10% of liquid asset to be able to pass Sharia screening. So receivable and cash cannot be more than 90% of the company's total asset. Moving further down, I have left Bangladesh for the reason that Bangladesh has got two stock exchanges. Dhaka Stock Exchange is following S&P Sharia norm that we have already covered, and Chittagong Stock Exchange is following its own criteria that I was actually part of creating when in 2013. But in the interest of time, we will move quickly to other countries before we go to the further analysis. And I'm conscious of the time that it's not, I do not have much time at my disposal now. So Malaysian Sharia screen norm is very distinct in many respects. Number one, this is one Sharia screening criteria that comes from the regulator. Until now, whatever criteria we have seen is coming from the stock exchanges or private bodies, but this one criteria is coming from the SEC Malaysia. This criteria has also evolved over a period of time. Now they apply quantitative rules in business screening as well. So in business screening, they have that all those businesses which are clearly prohibited in Sharia, they apply 5% tolerance criteria that we have seen in elsewhere in different contexts. So if a company is into, let's say, 95% into motor vehicle and 5% into interest-based transaction, I think if it goes beyond 5%, the company will fail the business screening criteria. So the clearly prohibited item, they apply 5% criteria. Mixed prohibited item, where something is mixed, for example, hotel, you have halal food or you may have non-halal food, you may have halal beverages, you may have non-halal beverages, you may have proper use of the premises of the hotel, you may have some vulgar use of the premises. In this case, they use 10% criteria. And then they follow the normal understanding of the Sharia screening process across the globe, which is total debt should be less than 33% of total asset, and cash should also be less than 33% of the total asset. So this is Malaysia. Two distinct differences from the rest of the thing. One, they have applied business screening criteria also on quantitative term, number one, and most importantly, the criteria directly comes from the regulator. So there is no confusion amongst the player and fund managers at all. This is Indonesia. Very quickly, I'll try to wind it up as soon as possible. So in this case, we see that in business screening, they have a long list, but by and large, they have also mentioned riba, gharar, and masir. And then they have given example of conventional insurance and many other forbidden things, and which is prohibited by their National Sharia Board of Ulama. So business screening is done based on the application of Sharia, riba, gharar, and masir. And financial screening criteria, if you look at, yes, this is the most leveraged financial screening criteria. We have seen earlier 37% in case of Pakistan. But in this case, in Indonesia, a company's debt can be as high as 44.99%. because that will be less than 45% of total asset. Still, the company will pass. And accounts receivable should be less than 10% of the total revenue, and non-permissible contribution income should be less than 10% of total revenue. So this last one is equivalent to DFM, where impermissible income could be as high as closest to 10%. And in all other cases, we have seen that non-permissible income should not be more than 5%. And in case of Bombay, India, we have seen at BSC it is 3% and NSC it is 2.5%. So this is the criteria followed by Indonesia. I'm done with the country cross-country verification. Many countries I have left because we see that Dow Jones and S&P have been creating index for many countries, including Sri Lanka also. S&P is part of Colombo Stock Exchange. Here is the common thing that one can study. So there are common exclusions like very clearly prohibited Islamic activities like alcohol, swine, tobacco, gambling, financial services, etc. And then in cases of Dow Jones, S&P, FTSE, MSCI, Malaysia, and AUFI, we see additional exclusions: weapons, cannabis, hotels and cannabis, non-halal food and beverages, etc. This is a comparative sector for prohibition. Coming back to financial screening, also we have seen that criteria moves from 33.33 to 45% in Indonesia, 37% in Pakistan, and 25% in case of India. So it moves between 25 to 45% as far as debt is concerned. The non-component income portion moves between 2.5% in NSC's case to 10% in DFM. And then we have a denominator 24-month average market cap, annual market cap, just market cap to 36-month average market cap, and total assets. So these are differences in denominator and the figures, and also numerators that we have seen. Very quickly, I would try to see that these are some areas where you have already noticed what is the basis of 1/3. Why do we have differences in market cap versus total asset? How do we purify our impure income, which is less than 5% in most cases, in less than 10% in at least Indonesia and Pakistan? And then why do we have so many non-standard criteria, etc., etc., and some of the other challenges and the new businesses that are coming up, where these companies are most of the time very asset light. So when we are doing Sharia screening and the company's asset is on the books of others, how do we conduct Sharia screening of such company? Like, for example, the largest hotel is not having any hotel room, or largest motor company, transport company is not having any kind of cars on its own books, etc. So these are some emerging challenges. I would want to not go beyond this because many of the questions will come from this, and these all are some. I think I have already covered this part, so I will stop from here and allow you all to have questions. And based on your question, inshallah, I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you very much from my side, and TAIF team, over to you for your questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shariq.
Thank you very much. Assalamu
Uh,
alaikum wa alaikum salam.
Walaikum salam. Doctor, thank you for this presentation, and thank you for your time, for agreeing, for trusting TAIF to be able to host such a session under your supervision. Thank you very much once again. So we have a lot of questions, a consistent audience that was listening. As a matter of fact, the audience was growing. I believe people were telling other people there is a webinar happening, let's join. And a lot of people are asking for the presentations. Definitely, as a courtesy, as Dr. Shariq have said, the presentation will be available to you on the uh, page. Then you'll be able to download this presentation from there onwards. I will run a poll while we take this question. So you guys will poll these. There are three simple questions. We want to know how was the webinar? Are you interested in learning more from Dr. Shariq? And what is your understanding? So I'll run this poll while we answer these questions, Doctor, inshallah. Okay. I've run the poll. Let the people answer. There is no right and wrong answer. We just need your opinion and feedback. Is TAIF on the right track? And did you like what was presented today? So, Doctor, a few questions are there. I've already answered. Which Sharia screening methodology is considered most suitable for emerging Islamic markets like Gambia, and why? Uh, then there is another question. How can Islamic corporate? Okay, that's a different question. So let's answer this one first. So it is which Sharia screening methodology you think is more suitable?
I think, brother, you choose whatever is best possible in your country's situation. Because one lesson that we have seen is that economies of these countries are not on similar footings. Some countries have different economic system, economic structure, business model, and some countries have different. In many countries, stocks are listed, the liquidity is high. In many countries, it is not. So I think as long as you are following any of it, it should be okay. But if you are asking me as a on a safe thing, then I would suggest that go with AUFI. And because the AUFI is a body created by Sharia scholars only for this purpose, so I think it is safest to say when you go to your market and to people, you can always say that you are following AUFI norm. So that will be better. In my case, yes, there are some differences from AUFI, but that is for another question if somebody asks. So I would go with AUFI in your case.
Jazakallah, Doctor. You have already answered his following question. Yes, brother, presentations will be shared. Why is 33% of the total asset and the 5% from the total revenue is always used? What is the principle and the basics of using this value? I think this is already answered, but Doctor, your comments on that since it's a question.
Yeah. So this is coming from fiqh, that whatever comprises overwhelming is identified by that. So, and I'll give one example. If 100% pure gold coin will not work in the market, so this gold coin will always be mixed with some other items, maybe copper, right? But this coin will still be known as gold coin if the 95% component or more is gold. So it will be known as gold coin, despite the fact that 5% is mixed up with some other thing, right? Based on that logic, Sharia scholars have said that if overwhelming majority of the company's income is halal, and if there are some contamination or some non-halal income coming in, then non-halal income will not overwhelm the halal income and make the whole income non-compliant, provided you calculate the portion of non-halal and then give it in charity or get yourself free from that. So based on this logic, it is not that 5% haram has become halal. It is not that. You can be partner in businesses where at least 95% is halal, provided whatever maximum 5 or less than that is non-halal, you calculate and you get rid of that portion through your portion of the benefit. So it is not that Sharia scholars have agreed to say that 5% haram has become halal. No, it is not that it is not the case. But yes, you could be partnering. You are allowed to partner because, as I said, since 100% Sharia compliant options are not available, then what is the condition? Other condition. Can we allow 100% non-compliant? No, we will not allow. At least 95% has to be completely halal. And if up to 5%, up to I'm saying it could be 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. Beyond 5%, no, you are not, except the two market that we have mentioned. So up to 5%, if it is non-halal, you calculate the non-halal portion, and up to your ownership, you give that in charity, and so that you are allowed to be part of that business. That is the logic.
Jazakallah, very valid reason, Doctor. It makes complete sense. Right. There's some personal opinion. They're asking that activities on weapon and arms are non-Sharia compliant. Why are they being openly dealt with? Means when they are non-Sharia compliant, why they are allowed to deal with in the countries? Your opinion.
That is
It's not
I wish
relevant, but they are asking your opinion.
I wish I was not asked this question. Most of the companies that we have dealt with and we are dealing with, stock market basically is developed in Western world. and the companies listed are more there. And we have seen that in the first slide that most of the Muslim countries hardly have functioning stock market and hardly have a listing culture and hardly have investment culture in their economies. So most of the Muslim money or the investment money is flowing to Western market. And Sharia scholars being conscious that many a times these arms and weapons companies are having tie-up with countries which are highly inimical to Muslim interests. And because of that, they say that partnering in such activities which are highly inimical to the society's interest, community's interest, humanity's interest, you better avoid that sector.
Indeed, doctor. They're asking about why don't we all set a common criteria for Islamic capital market screening?
That's a question I have been struggling for last 25 years of my professional life. And I'll be very happy if somebody supports me doing that. But I think since the ground reality is not same, the outcome may also not be same. That is the condition, brother. And you have seen in my own country. In my own country, you see some difference. NSC is falling 2.5% and BSC is falling, where I am part of, actually 3%. You can also say that why don't you go to 2.5%? And have the same standard. There are difficulties, right? When you make compromises, you also want to make sure that good investable options are available, right? Because the whole compromise is to get some investable option. You could be 100% Sharia compliant if you don't invest at all, but then that will not serve the purpose of the majority of the people. One person can remain uninvested, but the entire nation cannot remain uninvested. Entire population of the country cannot remain uninvested, because their surplus saving is not only good for them but also good for the society, that must be brought into the system to be able to create more wealth and more jobs and more goods and services to be produced. So while somebody could be very conscious of saying that I will have zero tolerance, but then the entire society cannot be put to that test, because it will come at the too heavy cost of the society at large. So people follow, as long as I'm saying that AUFI criteria is there of 5%. Anybody following below that is good. So let us start with that rather than trying to achieve the highest result in the first attempt. Let us start with the even poorer result, but at least move in that direction, which is good for the industry in long run.
Jazakallah, doctor. Thank you very much. I would like to share the results of the poll, doctor. I see we asked three simple questions. How was the webinar? How would you rate the webinar? Amazing. So there is the highest number people of saying is an excellent information, good and meet my expectations. Alhamdulillah. There are people who are interested in doing an in-depth live training courses with you. So 70% of the people are saying that they are doing in-depth live training with you. And the rest of the people are saying maybe I need more information before making a decision. So they want to make a very precise decision before deciding.
Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah. And if the course should be conducted, like how would you like to have? Is it should be in weekend or on working days? So that is 40-60. People are saying they should be in weekends and evening, and it should be on working days. Anyway, Jazakallah, thank you very much for your time. This webinar video will be available on TAIF YouTube and the website. There is a course that is coming with Dr. Shariq on the same point of view, same angle. We are covering all these areas in detail. Looking forward to have you in the coming months, learning from the prospective speaker today. Jazakallah, doctor. Is there anything else, last remark, or any tips that you would want to give to the rest of the people? Hope to see the rest of the people, inshallah.
So thank you very much, TAIF team, first of all, for providing me this opportunity to interact with some global participants in the area that is closest to my heart and practice. I'm very happy that if there are interest, I'll be happy to take into live sessions of how the actual real life data happens. A lot of things I could not get time to talk on. For example, how to collect data, how to arrange data, and and how to conduct Sharia screening for based on those data. So real life, how to apply different yardsticks, etc. is also. So I'll be very happy, and I'm grateful to TAIF team for their trust in me. And in case anybody wants to reach out to me, then my name is the same, Shariq Nisar at anything.com, or maybe shariqnisar@gmail.com is my email ID to reach out. Otherwise, also, I think I should be, it's not difficult to reach out to me through LinkedIn or Facebook,
Okay.
etc. But it is better that we go via TAIF also, so
Yeah.
that they also have a record of how many people have really benefited from the effort that they have done.
Exactly.
And it is their platform. So I am grateful to them for this opportunity. And
No problem.
inshallah, going forward, this was just a beginning. We will go deeper into the subject. Thank you very much from my side.
Doctor, I'm sharing your LinkedIn to the chat now so people can view. And there is a one question I usually don't do that, but this person is, mashallah, keep asking the same question multiple times. Say, please take my question. So I will ask one last question from you. Question regarding Malaysian SEC. Why is there criteria on total cash? What total cash? What does liquid asset has to do in financial screening?
That is lovely question. So the rule of riba is that you cannot trade in debt. And if you trade in debt, it has to be on the face value. So 100 rupees of cash or 100 rupees of debt cannot be traded except at 100 rupees of face. If it is traded at 99, discounting is going to violate Islamic law of riba. If it is traded at premium, again the Islamic rule of riba will be violated. And to drive rule from this, Sharia scholars have said that if majority of the company's assets are in liquid form, whether it is cash or receivable, then it should be traded on face value, which is not possible because nobody can guarantee that shares in the stock exchange will be traded at face value. So they try to create a rule below that. So why you have seen this is there in Malaysia and this is not there in India in the case, precisely because of our interpretation that this is having cash is not non-compliant. You know, selling items on credit is not non-compliant. So following that logic, we have said we have not put that criteria. But then there are other criteria, other bodies who say that if it is so, then people will still trade and that will violate riba rule, and therefore let us have some restriction on that. So depending upon the school of thought, depending upon their market situation, there are some additional criteria you might have noticed in terms of Pakistan, you might have noticed in terms of Malaysia. But basically the logic behind this cash and receivable criteria is coming from the prohibition of riba, where the debt and receivable have always to be traded at their face value, never at discount and never at premium.
With that, doctor, I have put your LinkedIn. Or thank you from the person for explaining this answer. I have put your LinkedIn into the chat. So everybody, please click follow Dr. Shariq. If you have any questions and all, please ask, and we are happy to be here to support you. Dr. Shariq, once again, thank you very much for your time, and we are honored to have you to be presentable to this global audience at TAIF. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum Assalam. Thank you everyone, and thank you participants and TAIF team. Assalamu alaikum.